Okay, we will now move on to our last presentation of the session. The title is The Human Element in Autonomous Shipping. The presenter is Margaret Lutzhoft. There's a brief introduction about her. I'll just stick with the first name, Margareta. Has degrees in nautical science. She is a professor of nautical operations, Western Norway University of Applied Sciences, Norway. Has degrees in nautical science, cognitive science, and computer science. Wonderful combination. Her PhD was about ships' bridge design. Presently, she is working at the Western Norway University of Applied Sciences as Professor of Nautical Studies in the Maritime Safety Research Group. Her research interests include human-centered design, human factors, and resilience. Margareta. Good presentation. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It reminds me a lot about Sri Lanka as well. Your presentation, what photographs and all.
You've been very patient and waiting. Vice Chancellor, distinguished guests, participants from the armed forces, and colleagues and friends. I'm very honored to be here. It's my first time in Sri Lanka. I've only learned 3 words yet, but maybe today I'll learn one word every day. So I think it was described as an opportunity by the chair. But what it's possibly my talk will be about the opportunities for research that we need to do. Because as a scientist, you always have to say more research is needed. And the main idea of the talk is to say, what haven't we done in autonomous shipping? And you'll have to excuse the focus is going to be merchant shipping mainly. A few looks at the military applications, but it's not as easily available. And I must say this was a very difficult talk to prepare because every day something new happens. It's not even every week now, it's every day you hear something new in autonomous shipping. This is just a few of the last couple of months, a couple of very large companies, some countries, collaborations. Most of Northern Europe are very strongly developing this. The earliest timeline I've heard is next year. There will be a Norwegian coastal ship, but actually she will only be remote controlled. Nothing autonomous is scheduled until I think about 2020, 2021. And while we're on that topic, we should have a little look at what are we actually talking about. There's obviously the manned ship, the normal one at the top. Something that will be coming quite soon is remote-controlled ships. There have been some tests that I know of in Northern Europe of a tug, not doing tug operations, but just being remote-controlled. The automated ship, where no people at all are involved, and I don't even know if we're going to get to that, but then the autonomous ship is defined as one that is mainly based on learning machines, but has the backup of a human somewhere. And this is just the controlling of the navigation and maneuvering we're talking about. So we can ask ourselves, why do we want autonomous ships? And maybe another interesting question is, who wants it? I think the engineers really want it. Because they can. Because it's really cool. And this guy in 1968, he said, of all the real and imaginary advantages for automation, the one that outweighs all the others is the exciting possibility of producing really advanced designs. You can see happy little engineers think, ooh, I could do some really cool designs here. It's not wrong, but this is one of the things we know we can do this. Engineers know we can do this. The problem is, what is it? What are we missing? There's another possibility that a lot of the talk about autonomy is a narrative. Some companies want to be known as the company that started it. Some companies have talked a lot about this, and I'm not naming names. But we think possibly it's a little bit of a hype. They want to be known as, oh, this company was the first one to actually talk about it, go down in history. And the problem we have mainly, at least that I've identified, that the human factors are still going to be there. We hear many people say we'll take humans out of the system and human error will disappear. But it's only one small part of a ship's life cycle that will take the human out of. The design and build, the management, monitoring, maintenance, and recycling, and I haven't even put repairs and rescue operations in there. These are all things where people are involved, and I'm not saying people make mistakes on purpose, but I do think it's not only the executive branch or the operators on board that make mistakes. Taking them out of the system is going to give someone a big problem when they need to find someone to blame later on, I believe. Does it mean no crew? This is a couple of examples from the flying drones, mainly military applications. The first one was called the Predator. For every mission, they used about 168 crew on the ground. The Global Hawk now uses 300. This is not all necessary staff. These are guys that, or ladies and gentlemen who came in because it was interesting and they saw possibilities. What else can we do with this drone? What data can we collect? What can we see? What's going on? So I'm not saying they're necessary, but 300 guys on the ground for one drone is far away from autonomous and unmanned. Something we can also find in the headlines, perhaps not very often, is this example from the Sydney Morning Herald. A pilot stopped the Psycho plane. He was fighting the automation for control of the plane, and apparently it was a horrific experience, and he saved the plane and the people, as they say, just in time. I've seen a few examples of this in shipping. It isn't as dramatic, of course, when a ship doesn't relinquish control, but she does end up on a place where she shouldn't have been. Another issue is they're not all going to be autonomous. There's going to be 20,000, give or take, ships that are still conventional. All these will be mixing with the manned, the unmanned, the remote-controlled, and possibly some autonomous ships. And we've got, when I was sailing in the merchant navy, the worst thing we could meet was a fishing boat. Because obviously I understand they are there for a reason, but we always saw them as someone who's in your way, and they wouldn't move, and they didn't see you, and they didn't seem to care. You've got fishing boats, we've got surfers, we've got whales, we've got all kinds of stuff, sailing boats, over and above the possibly controllable merchant and navy shipping in there, in the mix. And in this kind of traffic situation, I'm pretty sure it's going to be hard to keep control of a ship when you're not on the bridge of the actual ship. So let's have a look at what we haven't done yet. There's something I call the paradigm shifts. There's the trend that people say, perhaps deprecatingly, well, we don't understand the new technology, but the next generation is going to manage. But have you seen the speed of the development of technology? Next generation users are going to be out of the loop even faster than we were. We do not evolve at the same speed as technology, and next generation users will not manage any better than we did because they will be facing technology that we can't even imagine today. When the worlds meet, we're not only talking about the ship is in an ecosystem of services and other touch points. Just a few of them is tugs, pilots, and mooring. Let's imagine the ship is remote controlled or autonomous. How does she deal with all the other players in this system? Do you get a pilot on board? Is this a remote control? Does he walk into the control shore office? How do you do the mooring? I know there's a couple of autonomous mooring systems, but still all these have to work together when these worlds meet. And then the regulations, of course. We have a huge amount of regulations that may have to be changed, and the way it looks now, many of them are completely unapplicable, because many of them state explicitly that there are people on the ship for the safety of the ship and on the rest of the environment. There is one known paper I've seen that is looking into what happens to the maritime regulations and the law of the sea. It's a very good paper from a couple of English authors, but that's the extent of what I've seen yet. And since we in the Merchant Navy have to look at the International Maritime Organization, that's going to take at best 20 years to change those regulations. So it doesn't matter if we have a ship next year, regulations won't be there for 20 years. To the best of my knowledge, we haven't even looked at the argument that we are going to save money. Because yes, at first glance it looks like if you take people off, there will be less salary. You take people off the ship, you don't need to build an accommodation. You don't need to keep them fed, and you don't need a relief crew, and you don't need to give them pension money. And oh God, you're going to save so much money. But we don't know, because these systems have to be so redundant, so secure, and so reliable. I don't think we have an idea what it's going to cost yet. How are you going to maintain it? And the testing and validation and classification is also in the very first steps of development. I know one classification society has released a code for autonomous systems. But the big issue is they don't have anyone to actually classify, to do the audit. And the insurance, what do you think? You've all had contact with insurance companies one way or another. They don't insure a risk like this, do they? We want 10 years of data before we insure anything. Something that might be more interesting for you guys, we haven't looked at the security and environmental issues. There's something colloquially called the big switch. It's our friends, the United States of America, they want something that is called the big switch, which means if you take a remote-controlled or autonomous ship close to the coast, we want to be able to take over, control, completely. I'm not sure many countries would want to let them do that. There's the issue of piracy. I guess if there's no accommodation, there's nowhere they can get on board, but on the other hand, there's no one there to defend the ship and the cargo. There's hacking, which is a very serious issue because the Merchant Navy is way behind on cybersecurity. We have no idea how to manage. We have USB ports on our electronic charts where people can put in a USB or to charge their phone, and it just takes a few seconds to get a virus in the whole system. We really in baby steps there. The picture you see is maybe seen as a bit funny. It says pawned, which means in gamers' language it means I own you, I won over you. And this is written by somebody hacking into a ship's AIS system. So it's actually, they didn't move the ship this way, but they took control of the AIS system and wrote this on the Nautical chart. So they can take over if they really want to. Search and rescue, what's going to happen with the search and rescue? Because every ship that is on the sea now has to be involved in search and rescue if somebody needs it. So this would be some kind of non-participant, and then who wants to help them in return? There's no two-way street there. And obviously some sensitive sea areas, do we want to send autonomous or remote control ships into our polar regions or the very sensitive sea areas that we have in some protected areas around the world? Nobody's been thinking about this. And I think the final one, which we haven't done, is look at safety and human error. The first claim of autonomous shipping, this is going to increase safety and reduce human error because obviously there is no human on board. So where does safety culture move to? I'll be very interested to see that safety culture and the ISM, the International Safety Management Code we have to follow, it's going to move ashore to the control room, and the guys there are suddenly going to be finding that, oh my, we're liable. I'm the one they're going to point the finger at. Who are they going to blame? Well, there's no one on board to blame. What happens to that label human error that was so convenient for so many years? And just one small example that we know about people, if you're operating something from a distance, and I'm sure many military people know about this too, some other kind of behavior kicks in. It's easier to figuratively kill someone from a distance than it is to do it face to face. And you may, we risk that you consider it like a game, the game is over, you can get a new life, but then you don't have a second life, do you? But to end this, I'll summarize the points, things we haven't done, but you'll be glad to know that there is one fully autonomous system in existence already. It's so autonomous, it actually doesn't do what you say. What we haven't done is we haven't looked at the paradigm shifts. We didn't look at the cost benefit yet. Security, environment, safety, and human error are all under-researched. But we do have the autonomous system. We made it. It wasn't very hard, was it? Because I think some people would say it was even nice making this system. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Margareta.